and vote on all of them so we can.
Recording is on.
Let's go over. Welcome to the governance discussion for October 14th. To start things off, Nico had run the script for the. Actually, I'm just going to share my screen. I'd run the script for the gas refunds, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity to look at that quickly. This has August numbers on there too. So for August, sorry, this top part is August. So for August, 5.4 ETH, about half of which was spent on staking, there's the half of which is taken on staking, and the other was actually on the creation. Staking in this case being the voting component. And in September, 6.6 ETH total, 3.1 on the voting component, and then 2.6 on the proposal creation. So pretty good numbers. I think 174 votes for a whole month is pretty good there. And we can see that we had a pretty heavy proposal month there. I think a couple things from this is just seeing how having this in place does kind of increase voter participation, but it also kind of shows how much our voting process costs. And even just when we think about the proposal creation that I think Sky was talking about, how it's, $100 basically to the DAO to create a proposal. So that's something we should try to think about how to minimize, and there are ways to do that. And this, I think, presumably, we will do the same thing we did last month that was in the thread about refunding these. And I can't remember exactly the process for that, but I think Sky and Nico had done it last month and made it out pretty clear.
The last refund, when they sent it out, that was like for the history, like the past history. I don't know what day it ended, but is this August, September? Was this included in the last one? These are 2 new months. Because the first one was like from the start of DXDAO kind of thing. That's not this one, right? Sorry, who sent you these numbers, Chris?
This is Nico. He pasted.
Yeah. So I think August is not. I think both of these might be like new ones.
Yeah. Well, now that I'm reading it again, and sorry for, it looks like the August one is basically everything before that date, right? That's kind of all of because it looks like, look at the votes, look at the number of kind of staking proposals, and then I think September, this area here is just since that last one.
Wow. So we spent more in September than we spent in the history before that. That's what it means.
Yeah.
Wow. Huh.
Which sort of makes sense, right? Because the total votes in the August count is like 7 times the number. Oh no, it's only like 2 or 3 times the total votes in September, and the gas prices were probably on average 10 times or more higher, right?
Yeah. I mean, 174 is a lot in a month, right? I'm just thinking about that. We had a month of this.
Average, so 50 proposals. So the average votes per proposal is 3 there, but like recently we've been getting 7 votes. Like the most is like 7 or 8 votes per proposal, and sometimes there's only 1 or 2. So average of 3 votes per proposal makes sense. Well, there's all the steps to it, but then actually how many people vote on each proposal, which is 3 votes per proposal is not super high. We could get 2 votes per proposal, but that's going to be really expensive.
Yeah. Other kind of thoughts on this? I mean, I think this is, I think there's like just some existential or essential benefit we get from more voting and more participation that we kind of should be constantly seeking out from that. And I just think that That's one of the things that makes me excited about XDI is I think it even makes sense for someone with like an incredibly small amount of rep to vote now, whereas before it wasn't. So I think just figuring out different ways of engaging in voter participation is good. But is there any kind of just starting the conversation on any desire to tweak or change the kind of current gas refund system for mainnet? Obviously, some of the proposal amounts and different things may change as we move to XDI for certain things, but anything, comments on changing the current setup?
I think tracking these metrics is a good idea because I think hopefully we do see like voting go up, but also hopefully like the efficiency of like gas spending could become better as well, right? So like maybe we could find ways to like optimize like worker proposals by using like a guild or XDI or whatever. I think hopefully like we can drive the like gas used or like reimbursed down like at least per vote,
Yeah, I think worker proposals are a great place because think about how much that costs just to execute and do. So I don't know if there's, I guess just kind of like the standard is everyone's been doing 2-month engagements and maybe getting 2 separate compensation payments. And then even those compensation payments, I think, are divided into 2 different proposals, one for ETH and one for DXD. Not sure how we kind of figure out how to optimize that, but just kind of being aware that those structures have kind of efficiencies that we can try to optimize in terms of processes that we're working with, but also just in terms of the actual like gas components.
Yeah, we may be getting to this, but I'm gonna your questions yesterday, Chris, about like what is the relationship between the two DAOs have to be more formally established. But we already in the first week saw that like there's a preference to do stuff on mainnet. Partly there's could be a number of reasons. Like outsiders only look at mainnet DAO. They don't even know what DXDAO is.
Right.
It means more. If you do a proposal on mainnet, you get rep for doing that. Like people that do proposals on XDAI, like maybe they're going to get some XDAI rep, but we don't even like that doesn't mean it's going to transfer to mainnet at any point. So the real money, like big money, you definitely always want on mainnet. And the question is, are worker proposals big money or not? And then other things too. But like if there's no money involved and it doesn't have to be on mainnet, like a signaling proposal and a competition, even competitions have smaller money. You would think that if you want to ease things and spend less money and be more efficient, those are the 2 of the few things you would move on to XDAI initially. But to your thing, like what it has to be, there has to be a more formal connection. Like someone in the world spun up XDXDAO, mapped rep without DXDAO's permission. It was like social consensus, but DXDAO.
This Nylon guy, it's crazy. He's just acting on his own.
That's the cool thing. Anyone could do that next week too. But until DXDAO mainnet like officially says we're gonna give this one money or we're gonna respect its opinions if we ratify those opinions, it's nothing's official, like you're saying. It has to be established.
Yeah, I think before we get into XDAI, because I think like that's just the next thing on the list, and I want to set up with what exactly has been going on there in terms of like proposals. Anything else specifically in the gas refund? Because I just wanted to touch briefly on treasury stuff.
Yeah, I think it's those numbers, and I think those numbers are very important for us. Basically, we see that we pay actually a lot of money for governance, and like every developer and every member should actually like make sure that this number is getting into like to 0. almost to zero. And yeah, I think we should talk about XDAI.
Yeah, to echo that, it's good to keep tracking these and just being aware, and then we can kind of individually and then as a collective kind of coordinate around it.
There was talk on maybe increasing the percent of refunding, not to 100%, but something more than 75 would increase participation. But maybe, I mean, these things still add up, and you're spending money, so people may not want to vote.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I'm kind of like, knock on wood, thinking we've kind of hit a plateau in terms of the gas prices here, and so that maybe this is something that will kind of bite us through over the next couple months. But yeah, maybe a higher reimbursement would get some of those smaller voters who may not be as engaged. But I also think then the cost component does get into it.
Yeah, like I would be for 100% if we get to the point with XDAI that we ratified what should be going on XDAI and what should go on mainnet. If only like very important proposals are going on mainnet, then I'm fine with 100% reimbursement. I personally think worker proposals should mostly go through XDAI, but let's talk about that soon.
That's interesting. All right. Just to do a kind of quick treasury check-in, I'm actually talking with someone else, Horizon Edge, about some budget stuff later. So I wanted to just kind of checking in on that. And as we kind of go with DX swap, and because the multi-call scheme is kind of starting to come together, I just wanted to start the conversation again on treasury diversification and just see if there's a general direction to go in. So just for some to-ground conversation, the DXswap launch parameters that passed a couple weeks ago had $1 million of DXDAO supplied liquidity. That would mean $225,000 in stablecoins, considering the pools that were there, and that would be 700K of ETH. So there would be some diversification that would come to the treasury itself from just being on DXswap and providing liquidity there. That would leave estimated like $7.5 million worth of ETH, and we have I'd say roughly 100K monthly burn as a conservative estimate for ETH there. And so a lot of the conversations about the treasury are how we've kind of redoing the funding curve, and there's kind of some broad discussions around that. And I'm wondering if we should try to move towards some consensus before those bigger discussions on just getting some diversification out of ETH. And so, and there's kind of a whole bunch of concerns I think that would come to that, but I just wanted to kind of pick up that conversation now to see if anyone had any other thoughts.
Do you mean like putting it in interest bearing accounts?
Whatever outside of just holding ETH.
Yeah, there's no plan right now to have the DAO have the ability to use something like Compound. That's a later thing. So there's likely no lending platform that the DAO will use. Just switch into dollars.
Straight up another asset, right?
And if there was a plan to move every month pay most workers on XDAI in XDAI, that would mean you hold a couple 100,000 in DAI on mainnet and then move it over to XDAI once per month when it's time to pay payroll. That would be capital efficient, plus accomplish the goal of having always at least 2 months of runway in dollar stable coin.
Just as FYI, Ezra and Nylon are saying that we can use compound with the multi-call.
That's interesting.
Well, only if it's white.
You can use anything. Yeah, as long as it's whitelisted.
No. That's not. Well, John, you know the most details on this, but I thought the whole point was we're making it so people can't use like any contract.
No, so like it's important to think when the connection happens. So this multi-call connection, because at that time we basically define what the connection can do, and like we could include compound into the configuration for the first multi-call connection.
And we decided not to because that's not a core. We focus on the three most important things at first.
Yeah, so I mean, this is like the first iteration. Like moving forward, I believe like, there's gonna be like a second iteration of new contracts that will enter. I guess the treasury management is in.
Yeah, I mean,
midterm.
The multi-call will be just like the generic scheme in the sense that we can add any number of instances of it with different sets of contracts as many times as so it won't. We don't have to enable everything out of the box, obviously, but it just means that things like that are on the table if we want them.
Yeah, and I'm just bringing it up now because this is like, it would be a huge decision to like change hundreds of thousands of dollars. So like take a long time of us figuring out like if that's something we want to do, how would we do that? So like I think someone said medium term. And so I think we're kind of thinking in that.
Yeah, I'd also just add to that anytime you decide to send a lot of money somewhere with a DAO, it's going to be publicly viewable that that's coming for days, which means it's really important to see if there's some kind of crazy way somebody else can take advantage of the fact that they can see the DXDAO is moving $1 million into compound in 5 days. That's and I don't actually know what the answers to that are, but
John wants to jump.
So I think there was general consensus that like not lending platforms, but the DXDAO would only use data like limit orders for exchanging into dollar crypto. Because DXswap or Uniswap would be like front run central, yes.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
Like setting a limit 7 days in advance, that's also a little weird. I'm not sure how that works.
Like, do we have a final list of the connections we want to have in Multicon V1?
Yeah, the priority list was Mesa, DXswap so we can provide liquidity to it, and DX Trust. Those were the top 3 priorities.
Sounds great. Like as soon as we have this multi-call with Gnosis protocol integrated, like we can move forward with the swapping of ETH, right?
Yeah, so I think everything everybody said is correct. I would add that it's also a desirable property to limit the number of contracts that are on that whitelist, because you can think of it as like a tax surface basically, right? Like we don't want to lightly add something new. So I think the first step is really deciding whether there's an actual need, like what the actual intent is, right? So very clearly we want to interact with DXswap. That's a big motivation for pushing this forward. And so then we just gotta ask ourselves what else would we want to add. I think to the point of treasury management, like I think we could have a bigger discussion there in terms of like what do we actually want to do with it. I don't think we've really dug into it, but I think something that is probably like the first order of business would be securing some amount of runway in stablecoin, and also maybe using trading into stablecoin in order to enable providing liquidity on DXswap with that, right? And so as Ezra said, anything the DAO does is not just like front runnable, like everything else is front runnable, but it's like announced 7 to 10 days in advance. So people have plenty of time to prepare an attack. And we're dealing with that right now with the DX swap relayer, because providing liquidity is like a price sensitive activity, right? It can be manipulated if you don't provide it at the right price. And so I think, and just because, so I just want to highlight that it's actually a pretty big deal that DXDAO is going to be providing liquidity to its own protocol. Like, I think we're actually trailblazing here. I don't know of any other, DAO or, on-chain protocol that is like providing liquidity to itself in this kind of manner. And with it comes like a degree of complexity, because you have to worry about this, like what happens if somebody front runs. And Nico, I don't think he's on the call, but yeah, you guys will see when the relayer stuff gets published. I think it warrants its own kind of in-depth Medium post, and I think hopefully Nico will help do that. But it's not a trivial task. So I actually think that for trading into stablecoin, Mesa is the ideal choice, or really Gnosis protocol, because it's front-running resistant. And so I would recommend that DXSwap and Mesa are like two of the whitelisted ones.
And also sorry, Chris, but I think we can already do treasure management with the multisig if we actually want. With that, we could combine treasure management, which means ETH to DAI or whatever, and then moving to XDAI. So we could already save some months in stable coins while we actually set up the whole multi-call stuff.
Yeah.
That first example of what you just described should be happening very soon, or the money has transferred from mainnet DAO into the multi-sig and needs to be turned into DAI now. So it's $10,000 of ETH, or 28 ETH. So that will be like a test of, it's a smaller amount, but doing that with 100,000 is could be done the same way, I guess.
I'm curious, does anyone know if the Gnosis multisig has a Gnosis protocol integration?
The last I checked, it didn't have an specific app for it yet, but I thought they were working on it. I could check right now, probably.
But we're not the multi-generic call is not the Gnosis multisig. It's something custom that we built.
Yeah,
right. And the only reason I'm asking is because we have a Gnosis safe multisig inside the membership, and it's even Gnosis is not caring about Gnosis protocol.
I think the deposit into it, I think you can probably do it with manual transactions, right? Even though there's not an app, but you have to get extra deposit step.
Yep. We could build the transaction.
Yeah, the Corcus is all on multi-sig now. The flexibility and possibilities are endless. But I think what John,
one, by the way, yes, they even have Yearn Vault's app, but there's still no Gnosis protocol app.
Well, Yearn is a little hotter. But I think John's point of just DXSwap and Mesa being kind of the first ones, I think is important, because while there is a lot of talk about treasury management and how we could be optimized across a bunch of different things, I think with just Mesa and DXSwap, we can do a lot, or just have some flexibility and diversification. And I think we should be thinking about that in the short term, rather than kind of get caught, or the medium term, rather than kind of worry about the large treasury management plan that we can kind of unify amongst all of our products. Because Mesa has, with Mesa, we can kind of, I guess, diversify into stable coins or anything else in a pretty flexible way.
Thank you.
It's interesting too, because even though Mesa is front-running resistant, if it takes 7 days to pass a proposal, the market is just going to move, right? So you could say in the proposal, call the Mesa contract through the multi-call scheme, sell 100 ETH at, you know, 3, whatever the current price is. But then maybe the market moves one way or another, and you'll either lose a lot of money relative to what you could have, or you just won't be able to make the transaction. But
you can do also as at
You guys
the
also
price
realize-
of the execution.
Yeah, go ahead. You guys also realize too that when you get front run, you're getting a better price than you would normally get on something like Uniswap. So like you're getting front run by someone who is essentially replacing the transaction with the better price. It's not like you're getting, like, I understand that there are some fairness kind of questions about like front running, but in terms of price, you're usually getting a better price. So
And actually, if someone's front running on Mesa or DXswap, then that means they're like providing liquidity there, right? Like they're building integrations into those products.
Yeah. So you're saying we want people to front run on no.
No, I mean,
Yeah,
I think there. I think
so.
there is a point where like you can't. I don't know if the market could eat like a $500,000 ETH for
but
die trade, right? And then you could be like, I guess the argument is you're getting front run, so then you don't have bad slippage.
Yeah, well,
or
I guess
even that it would just fail, right? Like you would try to buy or sell ETH with some sort of price, you know, whatever your order limit or cutoff would be, and then the market would move so much that by the time you got to execute the proposal, there's like wouldn't be any more sells at that price or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, there are definitely like malicious ways to like do it, for sure, right? Like you could kind of like juke Uniswap. Especially if there's like a big order kind of like coming through. Right. But for the most part, I mean, the concept of like front running is like pretty like murky. I mean, it's taken from like U.S. equities world, where this concept of a national best bid, best offer, which is essentially kind of a legal mandate by the SEC that there be, you know, the best price of all of the kind of like venues, right? Like that's what you can't like offer a shittier price to someone just because like you have faster technology than them, right? Like that's kind of where this whole like front running thing. People just take this idea and like really make it seem like worse than it actually is. But I don't think we shouldn't do something because we're worried about getting front run and getting a better price from some fucking arbiter.
It's not. I think it's kind of. I see what you're talking about, but it's a little bit different. It's more of someone like the DXDAO is committing to sell X for Y at this time, and it's saying whatever the price is, and like that's a huge commitment, and we need to ensure that that price is not manipulated. So if we are selling like $200,000 worth of ETH, and we're using whatever the Uniswap price is at that time at that block, that it isn't like $200 per ETH. And I think that there are some abilities to potentially manipulate the price. And now I'm kind of talking, John, I don't know if this is maybe not the time to talk about like the relayer component, but actually providing liquidity on DXswap. It's kind of like how that price at which the order would be executed could be like manipulated by malicious actors.
Yeah, in providing liquidity, you have to worry about like actual, like I think price manipulation is a very possible attack with the type of scenarios we're looking at with DXswap, potentially providing a large amount of liquidity to a illiquid market, or you know, I don't know, something like that, or you know, where do we actually get the Oracle price from, and whether that can be manipulated. But I don't know if that's would be considered front running per se.
Yeah. But maybe it's the word too, and now my head is confused with all of the because it's such a kind of, if you are doing something in such slow motion and signaling to the market, it's just kind of like what are the potential attack vectors, and I think that's why, like John's saying, it's like kind of an exciting thing that we're going through this process because it actually really hasn't been done.
Yep.
All right. What about let's go to XDAI. So what are the proposals? We've got proposals with like 27. What's the current percent passing? And these are to adjust to add a competition scheme. What's going on in the XDAI land?
Yeah, so these are like the proposals that we have right now. There's also a proposal by someone to map the reputation because they didn't do it on time, which is cool that yeah, they're doing that as well. And also like a signal proposal for the status partnership. All are cool. Yeah, I don't know. Do you guys want to talk about like, future proposals and what will go on XDAI?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be. I guess there's kind of the two ways is what do we want to have XI kind of proposals and what do we want to use that, and that kind of gets into the conversation we talked about before. Or then second, like there are resources being sent to XI to like manage things now and to do interesting things now. And so like what are those things that we're trying to do with those resources that are being sent to the XDAI base?
Yeah, so I read.
Oh,
Yeah, go
sorry. Shoot. No, you.
So yeah, I originally proposed like a couple of competitions. I don't like remember all of them like off the top of my head, but mainly marketing stuff specifically for DXswap. This could be even like a meme competition of the best 3 memes will win $100, $50, and $20 or something like that. Memes regarding like DXswap or something like that. And like article stuff and like this is kind of like on the competition front. Yeah, also like I think a request for proposal. I think we talked about this in one of the calls, to create basically a map of all historical reputation data. So like how we've progressed over the last couple of months, and yeah, the reputation distribution, how the pie changes and stuff like that. Also, like taking into account like voting and participation in general.
Yeah, and
Isn't that something DeepDAO could work on?
Oh yeah, I guess this is something DeepDAO could work on. I guess we could just like approach them immediately then.
I mean, that's like a basic feature for their DAO platform, right? Like, I think that's one of the most important things, like rep distribution. I mean, there's like so many shit DAOs with liquid token governance that they're like breaking DeepDAO probably. But for the DAO stake DAOs, it would be super important to see how rep is distributed, right?
Yeah. Sky, did you want to say something?
Yeah. So and it can also be used for bounties, like easier and cheaper ways to pay bounties. And we have a whole list of bounties, and like Geronimo, was a helper with the Omen curation list, and ended up just paying out of like multi-sig because it was 0.3 ETH or something. That stuff like that doesn't, like all these smaller bounties for 1 ETH or something like that make less sense. You don't want to do a proposal on mainnet. It costs more than the bounty, right? So that pot of money, 10 grand, can be used for competitions, bounties, potentially a part-time worker who wants just to gets paid some DAI. So we could try those three things plus any other idea, and use extra for that. Yeah.
I just had a thought. You can actually, using the competition, you can create a bounty that basically places the money at stake. Like you say, we'll give 10 ETH to whoever completes this bounty, and then if no one completes the bounty, then the DAO can vote to return that to the DAO, basically. But if someone completes the bounty, they can get paid, which is pretty cool, I think, because you're actually.
How does that work? Like, what do you mean place it somewhere, like in like an escrow, and then you still have the DAO still releases it, or someone?
So the way the competition works is that there's a yes or no proposal for, do you want to run the competition with these parameters and this reward, let's say 10 ETH, and then if the DAO votes yes, it locks that 10 ETH, and then the winner of the competition, basically, like there are a lot of other parameters, but you basically kind of like you lock that 10 ETH for the winner of the competition. If there's no winner, then it kind of like goes back.
But the winner is like a TCR, like a list, right? Is that what makes it automatic? Or because what's the point of locking it if then the DAO is the one who decides to release it? Is it just like whoever ends up on the top of the list automatically can claim the pot?
Exactly. So whoever gets like the most amount of votes, or you can specify how many winners and the distribution between them. So like, first place, second place, third place, and like 50% of the funds, 30% of the funds, 20% of the funds.
So people are voting on the basically the order of a winning list, and then those people get to automatically claim from the pot.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, and also in general, I think we should replicate the mainnet DAO as much as possible, which means token registry should be added. With the multi-call, this is all not important anymore, right? We basically could use a multi-call instance on XDAI to connect to most of the XDAI contracts.
Yeah, all of the stuff on mainnet plus new one to test can be on XDAI, and then if DXswap is on XDAI and Omen's on XDAI, that will be used to better interact with those products and the surrounding multi-call actions around those products.
Yeah, I think the XDAI DAO should be some kind of like staging version in general for us to like really test. And the cool thing is it's like not really just testing, because maybe there will be some economy on XDAI. So like I think once Omen is there and DXswap is deployed on XDAI, we have the token registry, and then we actually do the exact same things on XDAI as on mainnet. So we could always do XDAI first because it's the same thing, and then do on mainnet if X wants that.
One important like clarification as part of like the relationship between the two would be to make it clear that like to get people to use signaling and other voting on XDAI, which if that's what we want to do for certain things, people know that if their reputation gets increased on XDAI as part of the monthly recap or something to mainnet, that you could get that counts as like getting rep on mainnet too. And that's a decision that needs to happen. Like, do we want to keep those two things simple? Like, if we do lots of proposals on XDAI, do people basically not want to do that because they don't get the rep on mainnet, or do they?
Yeah, I think this is a big one.
And I think to make that kind of thing like clear and official and more legitimate, like a mainnet signal proposal is probably a good way to like to authorize it, or to kind of spell it out. Because basically you want to give all the rep holders that constitute the actual DXDAO the opportunity to like voice their approval or disapproval of it.
Yeah, to like voice my opinion for a proper clone, which means mainnet rep is XDAI rep. Like if people really want to force or like members really want to stay at mainnet, they paying like high costs for governance, and they're like, I think those folks, I think it's way more efficient to use to have like a clone, just because we incentivize people to actually use the way cheaper governance system on a different system. So yeah, I think if it is not a clone, it is just a different thing, most of members will not care for a long time until XDAI is kind of something.
The question is like, if once a month or once every 2 months, like does everyone individually need to do a proposal that like ask for like the additional rep on mainnet to update it to what they have on XDAI, or like could you do that all in one giant mapping proposal like all together?
You could do it in a giant mapping proposal, but that's like just having that scheme is like very dangerous.
Yeah. No. Oh, yeah.
There is a scheme. It's called basically reputation admin, which takes. It has a couple of limitations, but it takes a list of addresses and a list of reputation.
Yeah. So super dangerous. So if XDAI became very active and lots of people did stuff on XDAI and reputation that structure changed, the only way to then update that on mainnet is for individuals to each ask, which then is a shitload of proposals. So it's like they're gonna go opposite. They're gonna diverge very quickly, and then they're gonna be hard to maintain, which is kind of a pretty big issue.
I mean, this could be like a quarterly proposal, not a monthly, and then it's a bit easier.
Also, I'm not sure if it's important to have always, like, it's not possible. It will be out of sync, the mapping, and I think the XDAI base could be like the base where people kind of earn it and sync it up to mainnet at some point. Also combining with some kind of proposals. At the end of the day, if they have more on XDAI, they can always sync up on mainnet, right?
I think it's important to point out too that it's actually like a two-way sync. Like if I have an address on mainnet and an address on XDAI, I can be earning rep or losing rep on both of them in different directions, on different activities. And so it's not just enough to simply update mainnet to be what XDAI is or vice versa. I think you actually, to do this properly, would need to be tracking deltas on rep on both sides.
Yeah, good point.
Is there I think John, you'd asked about this. Is there a standardization for the rep rewards on XDAI, or those got changed? So for each proposal or creating its proposal and things like that.
So right now it's exactly the same, and then these two proposals are cutting them by 50% for the plugin manager and by 35% or so for the funding and voting power. So that's the only thing that's changed, kind of like cutting all of these parameters. We can do like another proposal to change them. And to say something about like the mapping to XDAI, on XDAI we could probably use this reputation admin and register it to the DAO. I mean, it's dangerous, but yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, this is a kind of just a lot of different moving parts here, and I think it's kind of tough because it will kind of evolve into something organic that is kind of combines all of these things. But I think it could be tough to say specifically like how, I guess, legitimacy, I keep coming back to that word, legitimacy is earned for these different, for the XDAI chain. And I think that's something that will like come through over time.
But yeah, I think it maybe even warrants a separate meeting, or at least some people kind of being responsible for like proposing a detailed solution here. Right? And I think the things that, you need to look at how to do the two-way sync. You need to look at what the actual rep rewards are for proposals. It's something we've talked about a little bit, but have never taken a serious look at. I mean, I think potentially the rep proposal rewards might even need to be updated on mainnet simply to be more in line with increasing the distribution of rep. Like, it's something like 500 rep per contribution reward proposal right now on mainnet. And if you're, somebody like me or Geronimo who is maybe making, more than just their own worker proposals, like that adds up over a year, and we're both over the max rep. So it's actually, we're kind of like contradicting our policies. I think need to be looked at a little more closely for the rep issuance and distribution, just in general, as well as with XDAI relating to.
One approach is like having other DAOs that can be sub or under DXDAO. Now the the clone version of XDXDAO, it may be a different scenario, but eventually there will be a Rails DAO or a DX Swap DAO, or like there can be other like product DAOs, which are sub DAOs, and like those can have different those can have their own reputation groups. But in this case, where it was started as a clone and is theoretically supposed to be a clone, the divergence problem is a big issue. You could just treat it as its own DAO, and like, it can have its own distribution of rep. And DXDAO, which is the main one, makes a decision on to give it money or not. Like, and it goes off its own direction.
And it actually has that structure now. It actually is structured as its own DAO, and it could, like, once it gets we put some cash into it, maybe it could just go off and be on its own, and people earn rep, and there's suddenly a different like rep balance on the XDAI chain. So yeah, it's like how, since they are structured separately, how do you make them?
There's sort of like a few modes here, right? Like one is if we create a guild, like around a product or worker guild or DXD guild, which is actually in the works, and you can assign that guild reputation in DXDAO. That's one mode. The other one, which is what we just did with XDAI, which is at least attempt to just clone DXDAO on. So if that's actually done in a way that's sustainable, that really is DXDAO, right? It's just another replica of the, it's just like another manifestation of the DXDAO like entity. Right.
I was looking for it, but I can't find anything now. But David Hume is a Scottish philosopher who has some like very interesting ideas on identity, and it's kind of like what does make something a person a person, like an organization like an organization, and it's like a pretty deep topic. But anyway.
But I think to just finish out there, that the final thing is if it's another like guild or a clone that isn't kept in sync, it's essentially a new DAO, right? Like it goes off, it's actually a separate entity.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why Signal proposals made a lot of sense in general is because on mainnet, a Signal proposal is very different than like our core proposals that change technology, change the parameters, or like move real money. A Signal proposal is only as good as what the people who are in this community do once the Signal proposal happens, right? It has no physical connection. So a Signal proposal is only as good as the people that believe in that Signal proposal and do something and take action from it. So that's kind of why a Signal proposal on XDAI makes more sense than a worker proposal, because you're not moving any money and you're not changing any technical parameters. So that was.
Although I do think sometimes Signal proposals can be quite significant. Like for instance, the DMG grant proposal, that's a very significant proposal. It relates to, it was at a time, many millions of dollars worth of DMG. So I do think, and I mean, even if it's not money moving around, I think Signal proposals can represent very significant commitments. So I think you gotta have, like, it makes sense to gauge, like, really, like, how serious of a Signal proposal are we talking, and should it be directly made on mainnet? Yeah, I mean, if it's something that only involves, maybe a few hours of effort by some community members, then yeah, I think XDAI makes a lot of sense. If it's a giant, binding partnership between two DAOs or projects, then I think you probably still want to be on mainnet.
Well, let's talk about one of the important Signal proposals that has that recently passed, to kind of switch gears to the end. We've talked a lot about speaking, of course, about the 5-point plan, which was passed the end of last month, and kind of laid out a lot of different things about moving forward as a collective and figuring out different things to solve. One of the areas, and I really think there are two areas that kind of really require a lot more research, discussion, consensus, is the bonding curve, and governance 2.0 is what I've kind of been calling it, and what I wrote this forum thread about. So you can have a kind of read through it yourself, but this is an initial thread Signal proposal to establish a working group that would address some of these long-term governance issues that were laid out in the 5-point plan right here. So just kind of, I think it's really hard to figure out exactly how this structures. So I just kind of put these ideas down to hopefully get things started and to get the ball rolling. So the scope, a couple of the issues that we'd like to kind of broadly address are how to incentivize good governance to rep holders and how to create a long-term DXD and rep alignment. I think a lot of people who've been listening on these calls kind of understand some of these underlying problems in the sense that DXD is not rep holders ultimately kind of have control over the treasury and the DAO long term, and figuring out a way to make DXD an integral part of the governance system long term. I do think there are some existing governance properties that we're trying to preserve. Something I think is very core to DXDAO is anti-plutocracy, so voting power cannot be bought. Reputation is on-chain recognition of contributions to DXDAO, right? So this kind of goes into the reputation as something is earned. DXD is the financial primitive of DXDAO. And then, of course, security and sovereignty. I think this deals with looking at other potential governance solutions. And then, growth and decentralization, which I know is a core tenet of a lot of groups, but I think is really important to whatever system and structures that we're trying to figure out. It's very important that they can scale to, really global scale, and that scale does not create concentrations of power. Participants, of course, I imagine this group would kind of be open to all, just as all of these different calls that we have now and different groups working on different products, how we iterate out and be open. But I do think it's important to have like specific people that would probably be named in the proposal and would kind of be responsible or accountable in different ways. And so I think just name some core contributors that have been interested in these. I know there's people also on this call, maybe I didn't mention, happy to kind of arrange that. And then I think the two external groups that could participate now and I think would be willing are the Delphi Digital team and then DAOstack leadership team. And I think getting Matan involved would be really great. I've heard some really good ideas there. And then some other potential participants. These are just some people I think is kind of interesting that I've heard talk about governance, Radical Exchange, Democracy Earth, and some people there. And I think the output here would be a specification document. So this is not maybe executable code, but this does lay out a path forward for the DAO to go. Unclear whether that will be a singular path or a couple different paths recommended. The timeline, I wanted to be reasonable with this. So I know this would be kind of cat herding a lot of different people. So I do think this would probably take, say, 4 meetings. And that would be meeting every other week and doing some research and reporting back. And then resources, again, not sure exactly what this would look like, but I would want to make sure we get the right work and contributions from different teams. Obviously, the DXDAO core contributors would be compensated by the DAO, but if there's additional research that we would want participants to do because they have a good perspective, that's going to require work and time on their effort, and I think that we should compensate that in some way. And then obviously I think we should be not kind of promise anything, and any compensation request would have to go through the kind of the normal channels. But I think just as like a signaling mechanism, I thought $10,000 would be appropriate for the group. And then of course I think rep awards should in some way be expected or kind of encouraged out of this. And then just, a couple things on transparency and accountability. And of course, I think that we're a pretty transparent organization already for that. So that was it. Eager to get kind of questions, comments, suggestions on things.
I have one comment. I don't think this should be fully open. I mean, people could like listen to the meeting, but I feel like, if it goes beyond a certain size, then, I don't know if this is like, if this, I don't know, is actually good. So yeah, like this is just like one thing, and yeah, other than that, I think this is great and super important. And I think like this working group should be done for other things as well. Yeah, this is a good start.
Yeah, the open one is interesting because obviously people will want to work together and collaborate.
I guess I agree with Noah on that. Yeah, I think maybe I would think of it as having clear responsibilities, like who's accountable here, like has like what responsibilities of the group. I mean, ultimately, I think it's rep holders have to vote on like whether or whatever the recommendations are. Actually, like, yeah.
I just thought of something, and you can actually like create a competition of, these are the, let's say, 4 or 5 people, like say senior people who are joining, and then anyone else could propose themselves being a part of this working group and what they can offer to the working group. Maybe this is, I mean, if you want to get started on this fairly soon, then maybe not, but maybe for the next future working groups.
I mean, are you actually thinking like multiple efforts to come up with a solution and kind of actually compare them?
No. So I was thinking, okay, like this is the competition is basically a proposal for a certain working group. Let's say, I don't know, DXtrust, and then over the course of a long period of time, people can propose their candidacy basically. Whatever. I'm a project manager. I'm a product manager, etc. And I'm a dev, whatever. And then the DAO can basically choose them. They get a sort of compensation for joining that working group, and they all have their responsibilities in that working group, and they have to present at a certain point their result.
It would be pretty cool to have like a formal, kind of that involves the voting process to assemble something like this. I mean, even maybe using XDAI to nominate, and like, if somebody reaches a certain threshold, then they're on the committee or something.
I've got like an article that I've been working on that basically kind of like outlines how like decentralized governance works with working groups, taking inspiration from World of Warcraft and pirates. So
Yeah, I do think it is. These are one of these things that the things that we do now are creating structures and guiding how these things will work in the future. And it's almost just as important to think about how the structure will evolve in the future than it is to like what it's trying to accomplish now. Because I think this is, a way of experimenting with different types of coordination and organization, right? Like it's still interesting and crazy that there are different products being worked on by like a team around the world, and that's somehow being coordinated around. And I think that's a big step in that direction. DXDAO is pioneered, and so interesting to see how other coordination mechanisms can be built.
Yeah, Leroy Jenkins. On that topic, actually, shit, I forgot what I wanted to say because of the Leroy Jenkins.
Everybody should watch Leroy Jenkins' video from World of Warcraft.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I remember what I wanted to say. I think John mentioned earlier that we're kind of trailblazing, and I think like it's trailblazing on like a different level than anything else, I think. And like we should be doing as many experiments as possible, but we should also be like understanding how to quantify the experiment so we know what works and what doesn't. And this is kind of like a core problem with accountability in general in DAOs. So yeah, like these, some of my thoughts.
Yeah, and I actually, I really do think reputation and keeping it close to that word reputation is a real important component of that, because reputation is, I think I stole this, I think this is on the sheet or I stole this from John, but like reputation is like an on-chain manifestation of your contributions to DXDAO. And so when we think of like accountability is kind of this like, you will do this because like we can enforce that you do that in some way. We have some accountability metrics, as opposed to like reputation is almost this way of like conveying trust that you will execute on it. And that reputation is like on chain with the history that everyone can see, like how you've executed in the past, and that will indicate your capability going forward. Anyway, so I will probably leave that up for a couple of days. I think that's a pretty big kind of post, and I hope there'll be some comments, feedback. As I said, I think you can kind of comment